Commander Zekthara stood at the massive viewing window of his command ship, watching the stars move past like tiny diamonds scattered across black silk. For 300 years he had studied war, not just any war, but every kind of war fought by every species in the known galaxy. The Valdori Empire trusted him to understand their enemies before battles even began. His gray skin rippled with satisfaction as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The newest species they had discovered called themselves humans. Lived on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Reports said they had just learned how to travel faster than light. Their ships were tiny and weak compared to Valdori vessels. Zekthara touched the datapad with one of his 6 fingers, scrolling through images of human technology. Their weapons used old chemical explosives and simple metal projectiles. Some of their more advanced weapons split atoms for power, but even those were primitive by galactic standards. The humans had no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no gravity weapons. Their largest warships were smaller than Valdori patrol boats. What amused Zekthara most was how the humans fought each other. Intelligence showed them in constant conflict. Across their planet, they divided themselves by skin color, by the invisible lines they drew on maps, by which gods they prayed to. They wasted their energy fighting among themselves, instead of preparing for real threats from space. A younger officer approached, his blue uniform crisp and clean. Lieutenant Victor had only been studying warfare for 50 years, still learning the basics. Commander, the High Command wants your assessment of the human threat level. Zekthara made a sound that might have been laughter if he were human. Threat level? These creatures pose no threat at all. Look at their ships, pointed to the holographic display showing human vessels. Their fastest ship moves at barely half the speed of our slowest cargo hauler. Their strongest weapon could not scratch the paint on our armor. He walked to his command chair, his tall frame moving with practiced military precision. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion stretched out before him, filled with officers from across the Valdori Empire.
Ow.
They had conquered 47 worlds using the knowledge Zekthara provided. He had never been wrong about an enemy's capabilities. Sir, what about their numbers? Vector asked, studying his own datapad. The reports show billions of them on their world. Numbers mean nothing without proper training and equipment, Zekthara replied, settling into his chair. The Morvac clans had numbers too. They came at us in waves of millions, screaming their battle cries. But they had no discipline, no strategy. We defeated them in 6 months. He called up another display showing various alien species, the Valdor, had encountered over the centuries. The Christic were different. They fought in perfect formation, every soldier moving as one mind. Their tactics were flawless, but they were too rigid. When we broke their formations, they could not adapt. We owned their worlds in 2 years. Victor nodded, making notes. He was eager to learn from the master strategist. What about the Zephyrians? They held out for almost 5 years. The Zephyrians were clever, Zekthara admitted. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking our supply lines and disappearing into their gas-giant atmospheres. But they made one crucial mistake. They thought like civilized beings. They had rules about what targets were acceptable, what weapons were too cruel to use. In the end, their moral limits became their weakness. The commander stood again and walked to a wall covered with battle maps from past campaigns. Each map told the story of another species that had fallen to Valdori might. Every species follows patterns, Victor. The aggressive ones attack directly and die quickly. The defensive ones build walls and fortresses that we simply go around. The clever ones play games of move and counter-move until we bring overwhelming force to bear. He touched one map showing the homeworld of a species called the Corvin. These ones were perhaps the most dangerous we ever faced. They were master strategists, brilliant tacticians. They studied us as carefully as we studied them. But even they made the same mistake all species make. What mistake, sir? They thought war was about winning battles, Zekthara said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of experience. They believed that defeating enemy fleets and capturing territory would lead to victory. They never understood that true. War is about breaking the enemy's will to fight. Once a species realizes they cannot win, they surrender. It is the logical choice. Victor looked at the human data again. The reports say humans fight very strangely, sir. In their recent conflicts, they seemed willing to accept enormous losses for small gains. Some of their battles killed millions on both sides. Zekthara waved a dismissive hand. Primitive thinking. They waste lives because they do not understand proper tactics. Once they see real military power, they will understand how hopeless resistance would be. No species is stupid enough to fight when they know they cannot win. The bridge's communication system chimed, indicating an incoming priority message. The main screen flickered to life, showing High Admiral Vekfar, the supreme commander of all Valdori forces. His ancient face was marked with the scars of a dozen campaigns. Commander Zekthara, the Emperor, has made his decision regarding the humans. You will lead the conquest of their system. How long do you estimate the campaign? We'll take Zekthara reviewed the data one more time, running quick calculations in his head. Based on their technological level and military capabilities, I estimate complete pacification within 30 local days, High Admiral. Perhaps less if they prove reasonable.
Excellent.
Vekfar replied. The humans will serve as an example to other species in that region of space. Quick, decisive victory will discourage any thoughts of resistance. You have 300 ships at your disposal. Use whatever force is necessary. With respect, High Admiral, I believe half that number would be sufficient. The humans cannot match even a single Valdori dreadnought. Vigvar's expression hardened. The Emperor wants no mistakes, Zekthara. He wants this conquest to be remembered for 1,000 years. Use all 300 ships. Show the galaxy what happens to species that occupy worlds the Empire desires. The transmission ended, leaving Zekthara alone with his thoughts and his data. 300 ships seemed like overwhelming force against such a primitive enemy, but orders were orders, and the Emperor's will was absolute. Across the galaxy, in a star system, the Valdori considered insignificant. Admiral Lisa Carter sat in a similar command center. But where Zekthara's bridge was filled with confident officers planning conquest, Carter's war room buzzed with desperate activity. Every person in the room knew they were facing extinction. The alien message had been clear and simple. Surrender or die. One solar day to decide. Carter looked at the faces around her. Military leaders from every nation on Earth. In the old days before first contact, these people might have been enemies. National rivalries and old grudges had been set aside in the face of annihilation. Do we know about their capabilities? Carter asked, though she suspected she would not like the answer. General Marcus Webb, recently appointed as Earth's unified military commander, gestured to the holographic display. Their scout ships disabled the New Horizon without damaging it. Some kind of energy weapon that shut down all electronic systems instantly. Their ships are at least 10 times larger than our biggest vessels. Colonel Ryan Parker, one of Earth's best tactical minds, added his own grim assessment. Our nuclear weapons might damage them, but their ships appear to have some kind of shielding technology. Our conventional weapons would be completely useless. Carter nodded grimly. The assessment matched her own fears. Humanity had just taken its first steps into space. And already they faced an enemy beyond their ability to defeat through conventional means. But as she looked around the room at the determined faces of her fellow humans, Carter felt something the aliens had not accounted for in their calculations. These people were not discussing surrender. Instead, they were planning resistance. Not victory, but resistance. They understood the difference, even if their enemies did not. The war that was coming would teach the galaxy something new about the species called humanity, something that no amount of intelligence gathering could have predicted. The Valdori invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm descending on a calm sea. 300 ships materialized in perfect formation around Earth's solar system, their hulls gleaming silver against the black of space. Commander Zekthara, watched from the bridge of his flagship as human vessels, scrambled to respond to the overwhelming display of force. Earth's orbital defenses looked pitiful compared to the alien armada. A few dozen space stations, some armed satellites, and perhaps 50 warships of various sizes. Zekthara counted them carefully, noting how they moved in disorganized clusters rather than proper battle formations. The humans were clearly panicking. "Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the human vessels," reported Communications Officer Veltar. "They appear to be requesting negotiations." Zekthara smiled with satisfaction. Just as he had predicted, the humans were ready to surrender once they saw real military power, put their lead commander on screen. Let us finish this quickly and cleanly. The main display flickered to life, showing a human female in a dark blue uniform. Her hair was gray with age, but her eyes held a sharpness that surprised Zekthara. Most species looked defeated when faced with superior force. This one looked angry. "I am Admiral Lisa Carter of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said, her voice steady despite the impossible odds she faced. "You have entered our space without permission and threatened our world. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Zekthara blinked in surprise. Consequences? Consequences could such a primitive species possibly threaten him with? "Admiral Carter, I am Commander Zekthara of the Valdori Empire. You have one final opportunity to surrender. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your defenses are worthless. Submit now, and your people will be treated with mercy." Carter's expression hardened. "We have already given you our answer. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our dead hands." The transmission ended abruptly. Zekthara stared at the blank screen for a moment, processing what he had just heard. In 3 centuries of warfare, he had never encountered a species that refused to negotiate when facing certain destruction. It made no logical sense. "Sir, the human ships are moving into attack positions," Lieutenant Vector reported from the tactical station. "They appear to be forming some kind of battle line." Zekthara looked at the tactical display and felt a mixture of confusion and pity. The human ships were indeed arranging themselves for battle, but their formation was all wrong. They were spacing themselves too far apart, leaving gaps that Valdor ships could easily exploit. Their largest vessels were in front, exactly where enemy fire would destroy them first. "Begin the attack," Zekthara ordered. "Target their command ships first. Once their leadership is eliminated, the rest will surrender." The Valdori fleet opened. Fire with precision and overwhelming power. Plasma beams lanced across space, striking human vessels with devastating accuracy. The first wave of attacks destroyed a dozen human ships in seconds, their primitive armor offering no protection against advanced energy weapons. But instead of retreating or requesting mercy, the remaining human ships accelerated toward the Valdor fleet. Zekthara watched in growing amazement as human commanders began transmitting final messages to their home world, speaking of honor and duty and protecting their families. The first collision came without warning. A human destroyer, its engines damaged and weapons destroyed, suddenly changed course and slammed directly into the side of a Valdori cruiser. Both ships disappeared in a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. "What just happened?" Zekthara demanded, rising from his command chair. "Did that human ship malfunction?" "No, sir," Vector replied, his voice uncertain. "The pilot appears to have deliberately rammed our vessel. They're calling it a kamikaze attack on their communications channels." Before Zekthara could respond, another human ship accelerated toward a different Valdori vessel. This time, he watched carefully as the human captain, a male whose voice carried clearly over the radio, spoke his final words. "Tell my wife I kept my promise. Tell my children Daddy fought for them until the end." The explosion took out 2 more Valdori ships and damaged several others. Across the battlefield, human commanders were making the same impossible choice, treating their vessels as guided missiles rather than trying to escape certain death. General Marcus Webb coordinated Earth's ground defenses from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Every screen around him showed the battle raging in space, and every report brought the same message. Human ships were dying, but they were taking Valdori vessels with them in ways that defied all military logic. "Sir, Admiral Carter's flagship has been destroyed," reported his aide, Colonel Ryan Parker. "She transmitted Protocol Omega just before the end." Webb nodded grimly. Protocol Omega was humanity's final contingency plan, developed by military theorists who understood that Earth could not win a conventional war against a galactic empire. But they had studied human history and knew that winning was not the only way to fight. Implement Phase 2, Webb ordered. All remaining ships are to execute ramming attacks. All orbital platforms are to overload their reactors when enemy forces board them and send the message to every resistance cell on Earth. The real war begins now. In space, Captain Jake Morrison watched his crew prepare for their final mission. The exploration vessel New Horizon had been converted into a weapon, its cargo holds filled with every explosive device they could fit aboard. His navigation officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, calculated the approach vector to the largest Valdori ship in range. "Captain, we have a clear path to their flagship," Foster reported, her hands steady on the controls, despite knowing she would not survive the next few minutes. Estimated impact in 3 minutes. Morrison opened a channel to the entire ship. "This is the captain. In 2 minutes, we are going to show these aliens what human courage looks like. You have all volunteered for this mission, knowing the cost. History will remember what we do here today." The New Horizon accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion, dodging defensive fire with desperate skill. Morrison watched the alien ship grow larger on his screen, its massive hull bristling with weapons that could destroy his vessel with a single shot. But the Valdori seemed confused by his approach, unsure how to respond to an enemy that welcomed destruction. 30 seconds to impact, Foster announced. "It has been an honor serving with you, Captain." "The honor was mine," Morrison replied. "For Earth, for humanity, for the right to die free." The New Horizon struck the Valdori flagship just below its command section. The explosion tore through both ships, sending debris spinning across the battlefield. On the bridge of a nearby Valdori vessel, Zekthara felt his worldview crumbling as he watched his most powerful ship break apart. "Commander, we are receiving casualty reports from across the fleet," Vector said, his voice shaking. 17 ships destroyed, 34 damaged. The humans have lost 43 vessels, but they show no signs of retreat. Zekthara stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what he was seeing. In every battle he had ever studied, losing 80% of your forces meant immediate surrender. But the remaining human ships were still attacking, still ramming his vessels with suicidal determination. Dr. Helen Martinez transmitted from Earth's surface as the space battle raged overhead. Her message went out on all frequencies, ensuring every Valdori ship would receive it. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, as she began humanity's first lesson in asymmetric warfare. "Commander Zekthara, I am Dr. Helen Martinez, Earth's senior xenobiologist. I have been studying your species just as you have been studying ours. You have made a fundamental error in your calculations. You have analyzed our technology, counted our ships, measured our weapons. But you have not studied the most important factor in human warfare." She paused, letting her words sink in as another human ship exploded against a Valdori cruiser in the distance. "You see, Commander, you fight to win. You fight to remain human. And we would rather die as humans than live as slaves. This changes everything about how this war will be fought. Consider this your first education in human military doctrine." The transmission ended, leaving Zekthara alone with his growing dread and the terrible realization that he might not understand warfare as well as he thought. The invasion of Earth began 3 days after the space battle. Commander Zekthara expected the planetary assault to restore his confidence in Valdori military doctrine. Ground combat was different from space warfare. Once his troops controlled key cities and government centers, human resistance would collapse like it had on 47 other worlds. The first landing ships descended through Earth's atmosphere toward major population centers: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and a dozen other cities watched alien vessels approach through cloudy skies. Zekthara monitored the operation from orbit, expecting to receive surrender messages within hours. Instead, he received something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his long life. "Colonel, I'm Parker," stood on the roof of a Manhattan skyscraper. watching the alien ships grow larger as they approached. Around him, his team finished the final preparations for New York's defense. But these were not the kind of preparations any military academy taught. "Charges are set on all major bridges," reported his demolition expert, Staff Sergeant Kate Williams. "One signal from you and we turn Manhattan into an island fortress." Parker nodded, then looked at the other preparations. The subway tunnels had been flooded and electrified. Every major building had been rigged with explosives ready to collapse on advancing enemy troops. Civilian vehicles packed with improvised bombs waited in parking garages throughout the city. "Remember the plan?" Parker told his team. "You're not trying to win. We are trying to make them pay such a high price for every block that they question whether this planet is worth conquering." The first Valdori troops landed in Central Park, their advanced armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. They moved in perfect formation, just as Zekthara had trained them. Their energy weapons could cut through any human fortification. Their shields could stop any human bullet. What they could not stop was the entire park exploding beneath their feet. Parker had spent weeks turning Central Park into a massive trap. Hidden charges detonated in sequence, sending trees, rocks, and alien soldiers flying through the air. The explosion was so large it shattered windows for 20 blocks in every direction. But the Valdori were professionals and began advancing toward the nearest government building, following standard occupation procedures. They expected to find human officials waiting to negotiate surrender terms. Instead, they found the building empty except for a single human female sitting at a desk. Kate Williams looked up from the paper she was reading as armored aliens filled the room, their weapons trained on her. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," she said pleasantly, as if greeting guests for tea. "I have been waiting for you. My name is Kate Williams, and I am the official representative of New York City's resistance movement." The Valdori squad leader activated his translator and spoke in broken English. "You will surrender all military forces in this city. You will provide lists of all leaders and weapons. You will cooperate with Occupation Authority." Williams smiled and pressed a button hidden under her desk. "I have a different proposal. You have 30 seconds to evacuate this building before it explodes. This is your only warning." The squad leader laughed, a harsh sound through his helmet speakers. "Human explosives cannot harm Valdori armor. Your threats are meaningless." 20 seconds, Williams said calmly, still sitting in her chair. 19, 18, the aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Their sensors detected no explosives in the immediate area. The human woman appeared to be bluffing, trying to intimidate superior forces with empty threats. 10 seconds, Williams continued. 9, 8, 7. Some of the Valdori soldiers began backing toward the exits, their training warring with their logic. The humans seemed too calm, too confident for someone making empty threats. 3, 2, 1. The explosion vaporized 6 city blocks. Williams had converted the entire government district into a single massive bomb, using construction equipment to place charges throughout the underground infrastructure. The blast was so powerful it registered on seismic monitors across the planet from orbit. Zekthara watched the mushroom cloud rise over Manhattan and felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare. Fear, not fear of losing battles or campaigns, but fear of an enemy that treated mutual destruction as victory. "Sir, we are receiving similar reports from all landing zones," Lieutenant Victor reported, his voice strained. "London's financial district has collapsed into the Ebbs River. The Moscow subway explosions created a sinkhole that swallowed 3 city blocks. Tokyo's resistance fighters have turned the entire city into a maze of booby traps." Zekthara studied the tactical displays, trying to understand what he was seeing. Human resistance was not following any recognizable pattern. They were not trying to hold territory or protect strategic assets. Instead, they were destroying everything of value before Valdori forces could capture it. Major Tony Rodriguez coordinated the defense of Los Angeles from a command center hidden in the city's storm drain system. Above ground, Valdori troops were learning that every human building was potentially a weapon. Schools had been converted into sniper nests. Hospitals doubled as ammunition storage facilities. Even churches contained hidden explosives. Aliens are requesting civilian safe passage corridors, reported his communications officer. They want to evacuate non-combatants before continuing military operations. Rodriguez laughed bitterly. Tell them we do not recognize the distinction between military and civilian targets. Every human on this planet is a combatant. Every building is a fortress. Every street is a battlefield. This was humanity's secret weapon, the one thing Zekthera could never have predicted from studying their technology. Humans did not separate their military from their civilian population during existential conflicts. Grandmothers became bomb makers. Children served as messengers and spies. Teachers turned classrooms into weapon manufacturing centers. The Valdori had protocols for dealing with military resistance, but no procedures for a species that transformed their entire civilization into a military force. Worse, they had rules about protecting non-combatants that humans were deliberately exploiting. Dr. Helen Martinez continued her broadcasts from a mobile transmitter, educating the galaxy about human warfare while Valdori forces tried desperately to locate her signal. Her lessons were being recorded and transmitted by dozens of other species, spreading throughout known space. The fundamental difference between human warfare and civilized combat, she explained during one broadcast, is that civilized species fight for political objectives. Humans fight for existence itself. When you threaten our existence, we do not calculate odds or measure resources. We simply fight until we die or you leave. She paused to let explosions echo in the background. Before continuing, Commander Zekthera, you studied our military capabilities and found them lacking. But you failed to study our military philosophy. We do not believe in honorable defeat. We do not accept surrender terms that leave us less than human. We prefer mutual destruction to subjugation. In the ruins of what had once been downtown Chicago, Lieutenant Colonel Nancy Thompson prepared for her final mission. She had been captured during the initial assault, but had convinced her guards that she possessed vital intelligence about human military plans. The Valdori Interrogation Center was a model of efficiency designed to extract information from prisoners without causing unnecessary harm. The aliens were, in their own way, trying to be humane conquerors. They wanted intelligence, not torture. Thompson sat across from her interrogator, a Valdori intelligence officer who spoke perfect English. Colonel Thompson, we know you commanded the Chicago Defense Forces. Tell us about your remaining weapons caches, and we will ensure your people receive food and medical care. Thompson smiled sadly. I will tell you everything you want to know about human weapons. But first, let me show you our most effective device. She opened her hand to reveal a small metal cylinder, no larger than a pen. The Valdori officer leaned forward curiously, wondering what kind of primitive human technology she was displaying. This is a miniaturized nuclear device, Thompson explained conversationally. We call it a suicide bomb. It has enough power to level this entire facility and everyone in it. The timer started when I pressed the activation switch 30 seconds ago. The officer's eyes widened in horror as he realized what she was saying. He reached for his communicator to warn the other guards, but Thompson's next words stopped him. Cold. You wanted to understand human weapons, Commander? This is our most important one. We are willing to die to kill you. Every human you capture is potentially carrying one of these devices. Every prisoner is a potential bomb. Every interrogation is a potential explosion. The nuclear flash was visible from orbit, a small sun that briefly illuminated the ruins of Chicago. In his command center, Zekthara watched another mushroom cloud rise and realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. His enemy was not trying to win. They were trying to make conquest impossible by making every victory cost more than it was worth. Slowly, terrifyingly, it was working. The war had been raging for 6 months when Commander Zekthara realized he was losing more than just battles. He was losing his mind. Every night he dreamed of human faces speaking calmly about death. Every morning he woke to reports of new horrors that defied everything he understood about rational warfare. The Valdori Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same basic strategy. Superior technology overwhelmed enemy defenses. Targeted strikes eliminated leadership. Occupation forces secured key resources. Within weeks or months, the defeated species accepted their new reality and began cooperating with their conquerors. None of this worked against humans. After 6 months of fighting, the Valdori controlled nothing more than smoking ruins. Every facility they captured had been destroyed before they arrived. Every human they took prisoner either escaped or exploded. Every victory turned into a disaster that cost more resources than it gained. Zekthara stood in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Dominion, studying human military history on multiple displays. He had started this research to understand his enemy's weaknesses. Instead, he was discovering that humans had been fighting this way for thousands of years. The files showed conflicts where humans chose death over surrender, again and again. Ancient warriors who killed themselves rather than face capture, entire cities that burned themselves to the ground rather than submit to invaders. Soldiers who fought with their bare hands after running out of ammunition, then fought with their teeth when their hands were broken. It makes no sense, Zekthara muttered to himself, scrolling through images of human conflicts. But it's such. A species ever build a civilization? How do they cooperate when their default response to problems is mutual destruction? His door chimed, and Lieutenant Victor entered with the daily casualty reports. The young officer had aged years in the past months, his confident demeanor replaced by nervous exhaustion. "Sir, we have lost another supply convoy. The humans are using civilian cargo ships as suicide bombers." Zekthara did not look up from his studies. "How many ships this time?" 12 destroyed, sir." The human vessel was carrying agricultural supplies for one of their colonies, but they had filled the cargo hold with nuclear weapons instead of food. Our sensors detected nothing suspicious until the explosion. The commander finally turned away from his displays. "Where is the logic in this? They destroyed their own food supplies to damage our convoy. Their colony will starve, but they seemed pleased with the exchange." Victor hesitated before speaking. "Sir, our intelligence division has been studying human communication patterns. They appear to view starvation as preferable to accepting food from us. They would rather die of hunger than owe their survival to the Empire." Admiral Lisa Carter had been dead for 3 months, killed during the nuclear destruction of Earth's lunar command center. But her final orders lived on in resistant cells scattered throughout human space. From hidden bases and asteroid fields in the outer planets, human commanders continued their impossible war. Captain Ben Harris commanded the last official fleet of the United Earth Defense Force. 12 ships, barely enough to crew a single Valdori cruiser, but he had learned to use them in ways that kept Zekthara awake at night. Harris did not fight battles. He created nightmares. "Target acquired," reported his tactical officer from the bridge of the destroyer Defiance. "Valdori supply ship, lightly escorted, carrying medical supplies for their occupation forces." Harris studied the tactical display, calculating approach vectors and escape routes. But he was not planning to escape. None of his crew expected to survive their missions anymore. They fought because fighting was what humans did when faced with extinction. "Medical supplies," Harris mused. "They are trying to keep their soldiers healthy so they can continue occupying our worlds. We cannot allow this." His ship accelerated toward the Valdori convoy, its engines pushed beyond safe limits. The human vessels had been modified over the months of fighting, their weapons removed and replaced with nuclear warheads. They were no longer ships of war in any traditional sense. They were guided missiles with human pilots. The Valdori escort ships detected the approach and moved to intercept. Their plasma weapons could destroy the human vessel easily. But Harris had learned to exploit their enemy's psychological weaknesses. He broadcast a message on all frequencies as he approached. "This is Captain Ben Harris of the United Earth Defense Force. I am transmitting the names and pictures of my crew to ensure you know who is killing you today. Lieutenant Susan Clark, age 24, daughter of teachers from Ohio. Ensign Paul Davis, age 19, planned to be a farmer before the war. Chief Engineer Linda Ross, grandmother of 6, volunteered for this mission to protect her family." The Valdori gunners hesitated. It was one thing to shoot at anonymous enemy vessels. It was another to kill specific individuals who had just told you their life stories. The few seconds of hesitation were all Harris needed. The Defiant struck the medical supply ship amidships, its nuclear payload vaporizing both vessels instantly. The explosion sent debris spinning through space, carrying fragments of human and alien technology in a deadly cloud that damaged to escort ships. From his command center deep beneath the ruins of London, General Marcus Webb coordinated the global resistance. Earth's surface had become a nightmare landscape of craters and collapsed cities, but humans continued to fight from tunnels, caves, and hidden bunkers scattered across the planet. "Sir, we are receiving reports from cells across Africa," his aide reported. "The Valdori are attempting to establish mining operations in the Congo. They believe the humans in that region have been pacified." Webb smiled grimly. The aliens still did not understand that pacified humans did not exist. "Contact cell leader Jennifer Hayes. Tell her to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was humanity's answer to resource extraction. Instead of protecting their valuable minerals and metals, humans had spent months preparing to deny them to their enemies. Every mine had been rigged with explosives. Every processing facility had been contaminated with radioactive materials. Every transportation route had been turned into a death trap. Jennifer Hayes led a team of 50 resistance fighters through the African jungle, approaching the new Valdori mining complex. Her people were armed with crude weapons and improvised explosives, no match for alien technology in conventional combat. But they were not planning conventional combat. "Remember, we are not trying to capture the facility," she reminded her team. "We are making sure it never produces anything useful for their war effort. Every piece of equipment they bring to Earth must be destroyed before it can be used." The attack began at dawn with a coordinated assault on the mining complex's power grid. Human fighters emerged from the jungle, carrying portable nuclear devices, each one sufficient to contaminate the entire area for decades. They did not retreat after planting their bombs. Instead, they charged directly at the alien guards, screaming battle cries and detonating their weapons at close range. The explosions turned the mining site into a radioactive wasteland that would remain poisonous for centuries. No one would ever extract resources from that location again, human or alien. It was a perfect example of human military philosophy. If we cannot have it, neither can you. Dr. Helen Martinez continued her educational broadcasts from locations across the solar system. The Valdori had been hunting her for months, but she always stayed one step ahead by moving constantly and using relay stations operated by volunteers. Who knew they would die when discovered? "Today's lesson concerns human economic warfare," she announced during one transmission. "Most species fight to control resources. Humans fight to deny resources. We will destroy our own cities, poison our own farmland, and contaminate our own water supplies rather than allow invaders to benefit from them." She paused to review her notes, speaking as calmly as if she were teaching a university class. "This creates an impossible situation for occupying forces. Every territory you capture becomes worthless. Every facility you want to use has been sabotaged. Every resource you need to continue your war effort has been destroyed by the very people you are trying to conquer." The broadcast ended abruptly as Valdori forces located her transmitter and destroyed the relay station. But her message had already been recorded and transmitted to dozens of other species throughout the galaxy. Alien military academies began studying human tactics. Horrified by their implications, Zekthera sat in his command chair, staring at casualty reports that no longer made mathematical sense. His forces had destroyed most major human cities and military installations. By every logical measure, the war should have been over months ago. Instead, human resistance was growing stronger. The reports showed attacks on Valdor positions throughout human space. Mining operations sabotaged. Supply convoys destroyed. Personnel carriers bombed by civilians who appeared friendly until the moment they exploded. Every day brought new examples of humans choosing death over cooperation. Sir Vector approached hesitantly. "High Command is requesting an updated timeline for pacification of the human system." Zekthara looked at his aide with eyes that had seen too much. The end came not with human victory or Valdori defeat, but with something Commander Zekthara had never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare. The galaxy itself decided to intervene. News of humanity's resistance had spread to every corner of known space. Other species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their own survival. Ambassador Thelver of the Terran. Confederation arrived at the edge of human space with a fleet of 200 ships from 17 different species. They did not come to rescue humanity. They came to protect themselves from the implications of what humans had taught the galaxy about warfare. Zekthera received the ambassador's message with a mixture of relief and humiliation. After 8 months of fighting, his invasion force had been reduced to fewer than 100 operational ships. His casualty reports showed losses that exceeded the total populations of some worlds he had conquered. The humans had cost him more than any empire should be willing to pay for a single star system. Commander Zekthara, Ambassador Thelver's voice carried the authority of civilizations that had watched the human war with growing horror. By a joint declaration of the Galactic Council, you are ordered to withdraw all Valdori forces from human space immediately. Continued hostilities will result in coordinated action against the Valdori Empire. The transmission showed representatives from dozens of species, all united in their fear of what humanity represented. They had studied the broadcasts of Dr. Helen Martinez. They had analyzed human military tactics. They had reached the same terrible conclusion that now kept Zekthara awake at night. The humans have demonstrated a form of warfare that threatens galactic stability, the ambassador continued. Their willingness to choose mutual destruction over surrender makes them too dangerous to conquer. More importantly, their tactics could spread to other species if this conflict continues. Zekthara understood the real message. The galaxy was not protecting humanity out of compassion. They were protecting themselves from learning too much about human military philosophy. If other species began adopting human tactics, conventional warfare would become impossible. The established order of galactic civilization would collapse. Captain. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Earthship, New Dawn, watching the alien fleets position themselves around human space. He had somehow survived the initial contact that seemed like a lifetime ago, living through months of desperate fighting that had transformed him from an explorer into a warrior. The New Dawn was humanity's first post-war vessel. Built from salvaged alien technology and powered by nuclear reactors that humans had learned to weaponize in ways that terrified their enemies. Every system on the ship could be overloaded and turned into a bomb if necessary. Even in peace, humans were preparing for the next war. "Sir, we are receiving communication from the Valdori flagship," reported his communications officer. "Commander Zekthara is requesting permission to speak with human leadership." Morrison almost laughed. After 8 months of trying to exterminate humanity, the aliens wanted to negotiate. Put him through. Let us hear what our would-be conquerors have to say. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Valdori commander who had started this war with such confidence. Zekthara looked older now, his gray skin marked with stress lines that had not been there at the beginning. His eyes held a haunted quality that Morrison recognized from looking in mirrors. "Captain Morrison, I am Commander Zekthara of the Valdor Empire. I wish to formally request terms for the cessation of hostilities between our species." Morrison studied the alien who had tried to enslave his people. "We told you our terms 8 months ago, Commander. Leave our space and never return. Those terms have not changed." "I understand," Zekthara replied, his voice carrying a weariness that transcended species barriers. "But I must ask you a question that has been troubling me. Why did your people choose to fight as you did? You could have negotiated better surrender terms in the beginning. You could have saved millions of lives by accepting reasonable occupation policies." Morrison leaned back in his command chair, considering how to explain something that seemed obvious to every human but impossible for aliens to understand. "Commander, you made the same mistake that every aggressor in human history has made. You thought we were fighting for territory, resources, or political control. You never understood what we were really fighting for." "Then tell me," Zekthara said quietly. "Help me understand what drove your species to such extremes." "You were fighting for the right to remain human," Morrison explained simply. "You offered U.S. survival in exchange for becoming something less than what we are. Every human who died in this war chose to die free rather than live as a slave. That choice is what makes us human. The alien commander stared at him for a long moment before speaking.
How your people destroyed entire cities rather than see them occupied.
You contaminated your own resources rather than let us use them.
You
Turned every civilian into a combatant and every building into a weapon. How is this compatible with civilization? Morrison smiled grimly. You studied our technology and counted our ships, but you never studied our history. Humans have always chosen destruction over subjugation. We fought this way against our own species for thousands of years before you arrived. The only difference was scale. General Marcus Webb emerged from his underground command center for the first time in months, blinking in the unfamiliar sunlight as he surveyed the ruins of London. The city had been reduced to rubble and radioactive craters, but humans were already beginning to rebuild. They always rebuilt, no matter how complete the destruction. Dr. Sophie Chen, one of the few scientists to survive the war, approached with a datapad containing casualty estimates. The numbers were staggering. Nearly 2 billion humans had died. During the 8 months of fighting, entire continents had been turned into wasteland. The civilization that had first reached for the stars was gone forever. General, the preliminary reports are complete, Chen said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the losses. We estimate it will take 50 years to restore basic infrastructure. Our population has been reduced to pre-industrial levels. Nodded, accepting the report without visible emotion. And the Valdori losses. Intelligence suggests they lost over 60% of their invasion force and most of their support infrastructure in this sector. More importantly, their military doctrine has been completely discredited. No other species will attempt conquest using traditional methods after studying this conflict. The general looked across the devastated landscape, seeing not destruction, but opportunity. Then we won. John looked at him in confusion. Sir, how can you call this victory? Our world is in ruins. Our people are scattered. Our technology has been set back generations. Doctor, victory is not measured by what you keep, but by what you prevent, Webb explained patiently. We prevented the enslavement of our species. We prevented the Valdori from adding human resources to their empire. We prevented future aggression by demonstrating the true cost of attacking humanity. He gestured toward the horizon, where construction crews were already clearing rubble for new buildings. Most importantly, we proved that humans cannot be conquered. Every species in the galaxy now knows that attacking us means mutual destruction. That knowledge will protect human colonies for generations to come. Commander Zekthera submitted his final report to the Valdori High Command from his flagship as it prepared to leave human space forever. The document would become the most studied military analysis in galactic history, required reading for every officer in every fleet across known space. The human species represents a fundamental challenge to conventional military doctrine. He wrote, "They do not fight to win battles or capture territory. They fight to remain culturally intact. This makes them impossible to conquer using traditional methods. Because conquest requires the enemy to value survival more than identity." He paused in his writing, remembering the faces of humans who had chosen death over submission. Any species considering military action against humanity must understand that humans view mutual destruction as victory. Provided they maintain their cultural independence, they will sacrifice everything rather than compromise their core identity. Report continued for hundreds of pages, detailing every aspect of human warfare that defied galactic understanding. It became known as the human doctrine, a military philosophy that would reshape how civilized species approached conflict resolution. Years later, as humanity established itself as a major galactic power, alien diplomats would ask human representatives about their secret to military success. Admiral Lisa Carter's successor, Admiral John Stevens, gave the same answer at every peace conference. "We do not fight to win wars," Stevens would explain to audiences of alien military leaders. "We fight to remain human. That means we will accept any cost, pay any price, and make any sacrifice necessary to preserve our independence." Understanding this fact is the beginning of wisdom for any species that wants to coexist with humanity. the galaxy learned to negotiate with humans rather than threaten them.